Mr. Arnott, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Along very similar lines, what I was going to mention was in regard to EPC1, the transfer of £3.5 million, and particularly with regard to the internalisation of the driver's service. It seems to me that if you've had, we were told at the time how much this was going to cost, and now there's a request for a further transfer, which is described in the transfer of appropriations as being an initially unforeseen development. I'm not entirely certain how it can be an unforeseen development that if you take on drivers who are going to have to go from Brussels to Strasbourg, that there is a cost of the mission for them to go from Brussels to Strasbourg. So I just want absolute clarification on this. Was this 1.3 million anticipated at the time when we voted on that, and was that amount of money definitely included in the figures that we voted on? Because it seems to me that when you take a decision, you should be taking a decision based on absolutely the full information. So is this, as written here, initially unforeseen? Was it unforeseen, or was it in fact foreseen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In fact, it was budgeted in the proposals prepared by the administration, the cost linked to the internalisation of the drivers. But as it was also pointed out in the negotiations on the budget, there was a cut of an amount of €2 million. And that is why, although a lot of efforts were made by the different DGs to reduce the emissions, the fact that the driver service was internalised, together with a number of other issues, especially linked to raise in the amounts to be paid for missions according to the rules applicable to staff missions, it was not possible to cover up for the cut that was made of €2 million. So it's not that it was not foreseen, but the problem was that although there was a political decision to internalise the driver service, there was a cut in the missions budget.
Mr. Arnott, you wanted to ask another question?
I'm still very unhappy with this. I mean, just looking at the figures here, if you've got the even when you add up the other figures, the 3.5 million is one thing, but I mean, yes, drivers are staff members. I totally get that. Whether that's foreseen or unforeseen, was it included in the budget figures that we voted on? I don't think we've had an answer to that question. The comment about money being shared between different budgetary headings, well, that's not where this money is being moved from, is it? It's not being moved from those budgetary headings. It's being moved from the European political parties. It's not being moved from those other budgetary headings at all. And the final thing is that this is coming up at the end of August, and we're told that the money is going to run out by the end of September or October. This seems like an incredibly short timescale for this sort of thing to come up, and it seems that it's almost the metaphorical gun being pointed to the head, in the sense that if the transfer isn't voted through, then the services aren't there for Strasbourg. But why would something like this come up so late that it's very, very difficult to look at anything else? It just seems a mess.
Non, ça n'arrive pas au dernier moment parce.
Well, it's not at the last minute, because we were dealing with this before the summer break. There was a recommendation from the Rapporteur that we take a few weeks off to ensure we knew what we were talking about. So, Mr. Tarand.
Yeah, indeed, I was going to say the same thing, that actually it was presented earlier, but because of my clumsiness, we couldn't really decide in July. And I very much agree with Mr. Deprez and everybody else who has pointed out that it's a sort of process where the budgetary authority, meaning us, the members of the budget committee, is kind of left aside or overstepped by this kind of manoeuvring, asking less money and then transferring it from other budget lines. And it's a huge problem, not just internalization of a car service. But nevertheless, this time, dear colleagues, I think the proposal needs to be supported, because in the end of the day, if you think really and look deep in our own hearts, what would we miss more, the political groups or our private car services?
Nos groupes politiques nous transportent.
Well, we're transported by the different political groups. We're trying to ensure trust of all European citizens. The Rapporteur, Mr. Tarrant.
Thank you. You asked me a couple of minutes ago whether I have some doubts, or can I call all the colleagues to vote for the driver service part as well. And of course I always have some doubts, but I don't have second thoughts here. And I mean, if we could get more information by 14th, I could agree that 2 more weeks delay is not really dangerous or killing the service. But in that case, again, we will get that information, and I will still support that the drivers, who are now our colleagues, and to whom we are not even supposed to give €1 after the drive, because you don't give colleagues euros when they drive you. But they have their rights, and they must live up to the prices in Strasbourg. We cannot deny that. The second aspect remains, and that is how we do the budgeting and how the, let's say, the Parliament, but the other institution as well. I recall the Court of Auditors' nice proposal that they forgot that they become 40 years old and they need 140,000 to celebrate it, to entertain the court members. I mean, that kind of transfers really produce bad British press about us. And I'm sorry. But let's go for a vote.